Time for the business news now then. Owen here as ever, and 9 is the word of the day in Europe. Not the English 9, it must be the German one then.
Well, if the ground is shifting in Europe, Stuart, then the Germans are dragging their feet somewhat right now. We've had 2 years at least of austerity programmes, 3 bailouts around the Eurozone. Austerity has been very much the watchword for the past couple of years or so. And yet the ground, as I say, it does seem to be shifting and giving way to a new movement that favours growth over more spending cuts. And yet Germany is refusing to get on board with this idea. And it's setting the scene for a showdown, potentially, with a President François Hollande, should he win, of course, that second round in the French elections. Siobhan Silk has the story for us.
With recession biting again, Spaniards took to the streets in their thousands at the weekend to protest the EU-mandated austerity measures. Under fire from its own people, but the government got praise from the German finance minister.
The
measures Spain's government has undertaken, in the opinion of the German government, are very impressive.
With France, Germany has taken the lead on austerity, but now French presidential frontrunner François Hollande has different priorities. The socialist candidate's watchword is growth, not austerity. He wants, among other measures, EU-wide infrastructural funding and a stronger financing role for the European Investment Bank. Germany is determined to see the austerity pact through.
We have a clear agreement in Europe and a long tradition that we keep to contracts we have made, and that this is not dependent on the result of elections in member states, because Europe cannot function otherwise.
Hollande's take is gaining support. European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi is the latest stakeholder to talk of a growth compact. Merkel indicated at the weekend she could be ready to back some of Hollande's proposals, but she says there can be no renegotiation of the fiscal compact that 25 of 27 EU member states have signed. Hollande says if elected this coming weekend, his first foreign visit will be to Germany. He and Merkel have little in common politically, but finding common ground will be a priority for both.
So an agenda already forming for François Hollande should he win, of course, that second round. Now, it's always said that Germany, of course, rules Europe. You're detecting a bit of a shift, though.
Well, certainly, Stuart. I mean, you have to look at the picture around Europe right now. It was always said that the sort of northern European countries were the ones that were fiscally prudent, kept their budgets in order. They were the ones that lectured these southern Mediterranean spendthrifts, the likes of Greece, Spain and so on. But things are changing. The Dutch government fell because it couldn't agree a budget to bring down its deficit to a sort of palatable 3% of GDP. Remember, those are the rules that these European leaders signed up to. OK, the Dutch have managed to get that budget through on time. But if they can't get things in order, then you have to wonder what's happening around the rest of the Eurozone. And there does seem to be this movement. Yes, it's been led by the French. Yes, it's been led by a socialist candidate in France who obviously wants to win office by promising more spending. But this is a key European country, France. It's a key European partner. It's true to say that Germany does tend to run things a little bit, but you're beginning to see these influential voices creeping in. There's even talk of having a sort of European Marshall Plan that these EU leaders are going to discuss once the French elections are over. And you can be sure there'll be plenty of European leaders who will be saying to the Germans, you have to relax a little bit and let us try and invest, try and spend our way out of this crisis.
Could this idea be a little bit more palatable to the Germans, perhaps if it's done through the European Investment Bank?
Yeah, there's certainly some voices in Germany that would say, as long as you keep it off your books, if you like, and put it through another investment vehicle, it could be something that the Germans are prepared to swallow. The European Investment Bank has been mentioned. We don't know that institution quite so well, but it's got a pretty big budget. If you've taken a train in Poland, if you've logged onto the internet in places like Romania, it'll be thanks to European funding through this investment bank. It's got a AAA rating, which, let's face it, is a premium now in the Eurozone, but it largely depends on that one word, investment. If you invest in this bank, can you be sure that people like the Chinese, the Brazilians, those big sovereign investors, are they going to get on board and actually buy into this whole project?
OK, well, we're going to do the markets now.
Let's just take a look at the markets. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty quiet day's trade, Stuart, largely because, of course, it is the May Day holiday here in Europe and much of the rest of the world. Not an awful lot going on, certainly in Asia. Just the Nikkei, the Kospi and Australia's ASX trading. You can see there the Nikkei well down, nearly 2% down shortly before the close. Just worth mentioning as well, Australia, the central bank there has cut interest rates by 0.5%, taking rates to their lowest in 3 years.
OK, let's pick up on a few more of the day's business headlines then, starting with Delta Airlines, which is buying its own oil refinery to try to control its fuel costs. Delta, the world's second biggest carrier, is spending around $150 million on a site in Pennsylvania. The company thinks it will trim around $300 million from a $12 billion a year fuel bill. It's thought to be the first time a US airline has bought its own refinery.
And shares in US bookseller Barnes & Noble shot up by 52% on Wall Street. That's after a Microsoft investment in its e-reader device. The software giant is putting $605 million into Barnes & Noble's Nook e-reader, as well as its college business. Microsoft is due to include a Nook application on its forthcoming Windows 8 platform. It's hoping to compete with both Apple and Amazon, whose e-book businesses have taken off with their respective tablets.
Now, how would you like to set sail in an exact replica of the Titanic? Well, an Australian mining magnate has commissioned a Chinese company to build a copy of the doomed liner. He says everything will be exactly the same, apparently, except some of the technology.
A new chapter is set to be written in the epic tale that is the Titanic, a story laced with tragedy that's already been brought to life in many forms. But just 2 weeks after the world marked the 100th anniversary of its sinking on a maiden voyage, this man has promised to unveil the ultimate commemoration, a modern-day replica.
We're planning that when it's completed in 2016, it'll sail from Shanghai to London with an escort from the Chinese Navy. We'll be inviting the Royal Navy to escort her on its maiden voyage across to New York, and the US Navy to give it an escort back to London. We think it'll be a great achievement. It'll also be a great tribute to the people who designed the original Titanic.
A deal's been agreed with a Chinese company to construct the new ship according to the original plans. When finished, the Titanic too would be the latest addition to Clive Palmer's tourism business interests. But 100 years after the first Titanic sank, would enough people be willing to sail aboard its namesake?
In spite of the name, I think there'll be quite a few people who will wish to travel on it because of the Titanic connection. When the James Cameron movie came out in 1997, there was an upswing in interest in cruising among the general public because of the Titanic movie.
Palmer hasn't given an estimated cost for the project, but he has assured potential passengers that the ship will have the latest navigation and safety systems.
Titanic there. Owen's been practising his Titanic moment, haven't you?
Yours is far better than mine. It was Kate Winslet, you're dead right. I did say it was Leonardo DiCaprio earlier.
You did.
How could I be so naive?
All right, more from Owen just over an hour's time. Claire's got the latest news for you next. Stay with us.